It is exactly 10:42 a.m., cruising altitude 30,000 feet above the steel-gray waters of the Sea of Azov. The A-100 Premier, a flying radar station worth more than the GDP of a small island nation, is scanning the horizon with the arrogance of a predator that believes it has no natural enemies. Flanked by two Su-57 stealth fighters, the Russian crew feels invincible, convinced that their advanced electronic shield makes them untouchable gods of the sky. But stay focused, because the laws of physics are about to serve a violent eviction notice. In a fraction of a second, a catastrophic impact tears the starboard wing clean off, transforming this $500 million supercomputer into a flaming meteor plummeting towards the waves. There was no radar warning, no screaming sirens, just the sudden, deafening sound of Russian tax rubles burning in midair. As the fuselage disintegrates, raining debris onto the cold water below, the myth of Putin's air superiority evaporates with it. If the Kremlin thought their prized asset was safe behind a wall of stealth bodyguards, then they just made a fatal calculation that will cost them the war. This isn't just a crash, it is a strategic execution. While Moscow commanders scream into their radios in panic, the Ukrainian trap has already snapped shut. To truly appreciate the sheer audacity of this ambush, you have to understand the terrifying monster Ukraine decided to poke with a stick. The Beriev A-100 Premier is not just an airplane. It is a flying headquarters that can track 300 targets simultaneously and guide missiles with surgical precision from 400 kilometers away. Flying shotgun on its wingtips are two Sukhoi Su-57 Felons, the so-called fifth-generation stealth fighters that Putin claims can eat American F-22 Raptors for breakfast. With 3D thrust vectoring engines allowing them to defy gravity and an active electronically scanned array radar that supposedly sees through invisibility cloaks, this formation looks like an impenetrable fortress of death. But here is the detail that military textbooks will tell you makes an attack impossible. The overlapping sensor fields of these three beasts create a kill zone so dense that a housefly couldn't enter this airspace without being detected, tracked, and vaporized by a hypersonic R-37M long-range missile. Let's pull out the calculator and put a definitive price tag on this airborne ego trip. The A-100 Premier alone represents a staggering $500 million investment, a flying data center packed with Western electronics that Russia can no longer replace due to crushing sanctions. Flanking it are the two Su-57 Felons, adding another $100 million to the tab. But the real cost isn't just the titanium, it is the human capital. The flight crews inside these cockpits represent decades of specialized training, the absolute elite of the Russian aerospace forces. We are looking at a combined asset value of nearly $750 million floating in the sky. To put that in perspective, that is enough money to fund a small city for a decade. But stay with me, because losing this aircraft is like losing the crown jewels. You don't just build another one. This is an irreplaceable strategic asset about to be deleted from the ledger by a tactic that costs less than a Kremlin banquet. Instead of meeting this billion-dollar armada with brute force, Ukrainian commanders opened their playbook to a page titled Asymmetrical Humiliation. From hidden launch sites along the coast, a swarm of Corvo PPDS drones took to the skies. Now, stay focused, because this is where the genius of frugality shines. These aren't high-tech marvels. They are literally made of waxed cardboard and held together with heavy-duty rubber bands, costing a mere $3,000 a pop. It is basically a flying pizza box with a propeller. But here's the catch that the Russian planners missed in their arrogant calculations. When these cheap cardboard birds fly in a specific formation, their radar cross-section mimics the signature of a terrifying F-16 fighter jet. On the glowing screens inside the A-100, the operators didn't see harmless hobby kids. They saw a squadron of NATO standard killers rushing towards them at attack speed. The massive A-100 began screaming warnings to its Su-57 bodyguards, painting these phantom targets as immediate lethal threats. It is a moment of pure comedy. The most sophisticated sensors in the Russian arsenal were being hacked by a low-tech science project. The invincible radar was effectively hallucinating. Panic flooded the comms as they were forced into a binary trap. Ignore the blips and risk death, or engage. They chose to fight the ghosts. The Su-57 broke formation, lighting their afterburners to intercept targets that couldn't even survive a rainstorm. But wait, there's one more layer. By reacting to the cardboard, they turned on every active targeting radar they had, lighting themselves up like a Christmas tree in a dark forest. The sky above the Sea of Azov turned into a chaotic pyrotechnic display as the Su-57 unleashed their fury. R-771 air-to-air missiles, each carrying a price tag of nearly $1 million, roared off the rails in a display of raw power. It was the definition of strategic overkill, like using a diamond-encrusted sledgehammer to crush a paper cup. The hypersonic warhead slammed into the slow-moving Corvo drones, obliterating the cardboard frames in spectacular fireballs of burning wax and rubber bands. Inside the cockpits, the Russian pilots were drowning in adrenaline and unearned pride. You can almost hear the arrogant chatter over the radio. "Splash 1, Splash 2, airspace cleared." They were likely high-fiving, convinced they had just intercepted a major Ukrainian offensive and saved the high-value A-100 from certain doom. The radar operators on the Premiere probably breathed a sigh of relief, watching the hostile blips vanish from their screens one by one. But here is the catch that makes this moment so deliciously ironic. Those explosions weren't victories, they were financial crimes. Russia just burned through millions of dollars of advanced ordnance to destroy mere pennies worth of packaging material. But the humiliation goes deeper. In their eagerness to play hero and chase the decoys, the Su-57 had dived aggressively, leaving their optimal protective altitude. They had taken the bait, emptied their primary missile slots on ghosts, and left the flying eye completely naked in the sky. While they were busy celebrating a hollow victory over a cardboard box, the real threat was just waking up. The celebration in the Russian headsets was cut short by a digital scream. From the ground, a Patriot PAC-3 battery suddenly blasted its search radar active for exactly 5 seconds. It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. Panic instantly gripped the Su-57 pilots. Thinking they were being targeted by surface-to-air missiles, they instinctively dove hard toward the deck to hide in the ground clutter. It was a reflex action, and it was exactly what Ukraine was counting on. By diving, they left the A-100 Premier high, dry, and defenseless. That was the signal. Skimming just 20 feet above the freezing whitecaps, invisible to the chaos above, a Ukrainian F-16 Viper pulled its nose up in a violent vertical climb. This wasn't a ghost. This was the Grim Reaper. The pilot didn't even need to turn on his radar, which would have alerted the enemy. Instead, he fired a pair of A-100D AMRAAMs in home-on-jam mode. Stay focused, because this is where the technology gets terrifying. The A-100, now trying to jam the Patriot signal, was blasting out powerful electronic waves. The American missiles locked onto that jamming signal like a bloodhound catching a scent. The Russians were literally guiding the arrow to their own heart. Time to impact, 14 seconds. The A-100 crew thought their electronic warfare suite was their shield, but in a cruel twist of fate, they had just turned themselves into the brightest lighthouse in the electronic spectrum. The executioner is inbound at Mach 4, and there is nowhere left to hide. Time to impact, 0. The first AIM-120D AMRAAM slams into the starboard engine nacelle, but the real kill shot follows milliseconds later. Stay focused, because physics is about to enact a cruel sentence on Russian engineering. The second missile, riding the jamming beam straight to its source, detonates its annular blast fragmentation warhead directly beneath the A-100's fuselage. This isn't just a firecracker. It is a meticulously engineered expanding ring of tungsten rods moving at hypersonic speeds. The shockwave instantly compromises the structural integrity of the airframe, snapping the titanium wing spars like dry twigs. But here is the catch that seals their fate. The explosion severs the hydraulic lines powering the massive rotating radar dome, the mushroom on top. Without stabilization, the multi-ton dish catches the wind and acts as a giant, uncontrolled air brake, violently twisting the fuselage with insurmountable torque forces. The aluminum skin peels away like the wrapper of a cheap candy bar, exposing the burning interior to the relentless slipstream. Inside, the cabin depressurizes instantly, sucking out not just the air, but the frantic confusion of the crew. The fuel tanks in the wings, ruptured by high-velocity shrapnel, ignite into a catastrophic aerosol cloud. For a brief second, a second sun appears over the Sea of Azov. Gravity takes the charred remains of Putin's $500 million dream and drags it down to the water. It is a terrifying display of kinetic energy, converting a strategic asset into a rain of expensive confetti. The flying eye has blinked for the last time. Let's perform the final financial autopsy on this disaster, because the numbers are frankly insulting to the Russian taxpayer. Ukraine's investment? A handful of Corvo cardboard drones, total cost roughly $20,000, and 2 AMRAAM missiles. The total bill for this operation sits comfortably under $3 million. On the other side of the ledger, the Kremlin just watched $500 million evaporate in a cloud of smoke. That is a return on investment of over 16,000%. A hedge fund manager on Wall Street would kill for those margins. But the real cost isn't the cash, it is the blindness. Without the A-100, the entire southern front is now a dark room, and Ukraine just turned off the lights. The unbeatable Russian air defense system was dismantled by waxed paper and American software. So I have to ask the strategists in the comments, if you were the Russian commander tomorrow, do you admit defeat, or do you send more jets into the meat grinder to save face? Let me know your move below.